Well, good evening, everybody. Coach Robert Cagle here with National Scouting Report, and we have a great opportunity to share some really good time and quality time with Coach Mandi Balduf. Coach Balduf, how are you doing?
It's going, coach. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. It's always good to see you. Uh, for those that may not know Coach Balduf, so let me give you the rundown on her real quick, okay? So Coach Balduf has been doing this since Spot was a pup and Moby Dick was a minnow. She's been doing this a long time. Okay. So 15 years of college coaching experience is what she brings to the table for people to actually glean a ton of her knowledge and experience through this journey. Those stops include obviously of those 15 years, 12 of those years, if I'm not mistaken, was in the realm of being a head coach, and 3 of those years were being an assistant. And her career started, guys. I mean, she's been at places like the University of Kentucky. She's been at places like Tiffin and South Dakota. She's been in her head coaching career. She started at Chowan in the Carolinas, and where she spent several years there, and then she finished up her D2 career as a head coach at Christian Brothers. Mandy, that's a lot of ball to coach in the softball world. But so tell me about your favorite year. And look, she had over 200 wins and two NCAA regional appearances. So this is not somebody that that just kind of, I don't know, lucked into it. You've been doing it a while. Tell me about your funnest year coaching.
Ooh, that is, that's a tough one. There's so many for so many different reasons, but I will probably never forget winning the first conference championship at Chowan and just running through that and just giving those girls that opportunity to be at a regional. That was quite an experience. And there's so many off the field. I mean, there's so many different memories and graduations and weddings. I mean, that's hard to say what's one, but at the end of the day, it's still, I think, the big takeaway is I still have contacts with those kids and those relationships. So I guess that's the best part of coaching is you're not going to reach them all, but I know I reached a lot. So I'll take that away as my best memory.
And that I tell you, I think that is from a coaching perspective, the the coolest thing about that is once those kids have played for you,
Mhm.
and then they go on to start their lives, right? And they begin to start careers, and they begin to maybe enter and get married or start having children or whatever their path is. But it's always cool because they always seem to find time to send you a text message or an email or shoot you a little something on in DMs on social, and staying in touch because you had a quality part of their life,
Oh yeah.
and you were part of that part of their life that was important to them at the time, and they don't ever forget that. I think that's pretty cool. For our audience today, we're not going to go reminisce about last
It ain't
year and
about me. It's not about me.
all that, but what I wanted to set the stage for how important everybody understands that the coaches are in this process, and how much impact they have on these young people's lives moving forward. But today we're really going to focus on the softball world of recruiting. And Mandi lives in that world every day. I live in that world every day. We I wouldn't even know where to begin on a daily basis and a weekly basis how many college coaches Mandi communicates with and I communicate with, and so many of our NSR scouts that work in the softball realm communicate with, but I know it's hundreds. And
Mm-hmm.
as we go through that, the recent years, especially as we go back as early as August of 24, just a few months ago, we began to have these significant changes. And just a few weeks ago, back right at the end of the year, first of the year, we had another significant change as far as a lawsuit that had came down because of the junior college stuff from the football kid at Vanderbilt. So there's a lot of changing and fluid movement to this process. And I think what I want us to do, Manny, today is really try to inform the listeners and the people in the audience that watch really how difficult this is to navigate now because of all these moving things. And what was really good that your high school coach or your travel coach or your travel ball coordinator was able to maybe help guide you through a little bit a year ago or 2 years ago. Now all of a sudden it's so fluid that everybody has a misunderstanding of the process. So let's jump out with this. Tell us about, and let's talk about some of these new changes that have come about since we did roster limitations and
Yeah.
scholarship limits, all that kind of stuff. Because when it first happened, man, if you remember, the media took off to it and said, this is awesome. Every D1's
Yeah.
kid's going to get, they're going up from 12 to 25. And they just went nuts about this thing, right? And so,
Yeah, they assume that there's going to be more opportunities and more scholarships and more people we're going to get taken care of. And I think you and I quickly knew that wasn't going to be the case. And that, starting with the Division 1, and it's going to trickle down into D2. It's just going to trickle all the way down. Everybody's going to feel that drop of the rock in the water and that ripple. Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, it's fluid, man. This stuff changes. It feels like every month something's coming out. I think we have something coming up in April. We're about to find out a little bit more from the Division 1 standpoint. So yeah,
is
things
there's a
are
committee
things
meeting.
are changing.
There's a committee meeting that's going to take place in April,
Mm-hmm.
and there's several proposed changes that could come down again that will even
Mm-hmm.
impact further the 26, 27 classes moving forward. And that's going to be something that we have to live. I want to share with the audience, and I know you experienced this as well. When in August, when it was the first part, it was either the last week of July or the first week of August when the NCAA came out because of this lawsuit, and then all of a sudden they started talking about from Division 1 that they were going to have, they were going to do scholarships up to was it 24 or 25? 25
It's 25. It went from 11.7, basically
to
12 to
25.
25. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the frenzy was how great this is going to impact all these kids, and all these kids now are going to get full rides and all this kind of stuff. But the problem with that is people don't realize the media gives you that piece of it, but behind the scenes, those guys, those coaches, he or she was already carrying 32 to 34 kids on their roster anyway.
Yep.
So what now? What do they got to do? So I want you
You
to
got to
share
cut.
your experience of some
Okay.
communication you had with coaches at Division 1 level. And
Yep.
look, guys, we're talking about, for our listeners and for our people watching, we're talking about Division 1 at the moment. Guys, that only impacts 1.7% of the athletes that play in high school. That's it. So
Yeah.
we're spending a lot of time talking about Division 1 stuff because that's the hot topic, but it
Right.
probably doesn't even affect your child as a player. But that's a different subject for later on in the
That's another
conversation.
day.
So we'll get there in a minute. But what
Yeah.
was some of
So,
your conversations with coaches about when they heard
well,
that?
already, coach. So I had a kid at a Division 1 school. She just got there this past fall. She transferred mid-year because they were already making cuts preparing for this coming fall. So she basically told the kids, hey, listen, I'm not going to have a spot for you. So if you want to go ahead and find something now, you're more than welcome to do that. So I already had kids having to transfer and make different plans. Coach, I've had kids offers rescinded. There's no more spots. There's not that extra carryover, right? And if they do, I'm not sure if it's a situation where we're going to have, if the schools can afford it, if they can do all 25 scholarships, the haves are going to continue to have. And I think the have nots just won't and can't.
Yep.
You may see some declassifications. If they can't manage that, then that's what we're seeing. So yes, I'm seeing coaches having to rescind offers, and in 26 class, man, coach, I've had to just get my families to understand that that's probably not going to be an opportunity. Not saying that you can't, that's not the level you could be playing at, but the temperature's changing, man. There's just not going to be that opportunities. So I mean, I'm trying to get my kids to maybe humble themselves a little bit and look outside and look at other divisions, because it's going to be slim. It's going to be really slim for a Division 1 at that level, high power fours, to go after a high school kid when they're going to go to the portal. I think you've heard that.
Well, let's look at the reality if we
Yeah.
can real quick. Let's look at reality before August, before the roster limitation, and that's what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and the so-called increase of money. And I want to address something before I get to this next point. Guys, just because the NCAA, through this lawsuit, said that a school could grant 25 scholarships, it's still going to be up to each individual conference and each individual school whether they totally buy in and fund those 25. At this point in time, I don't know, and I'm going to say at this point in time, I don't know if any Power Four conference has totally bought into fully funding all 25 scholarships.
Mhm.
However, those Power Four schools are using NIL money to fund that situation, and that's a different subject. We won't get into that right now today, probably, but that's a different subject. So there's a limitation on what these conferences will they eventually get to the 25 and fund them if they have the money, maybe so. But if they don't, then all of a sudden the haves will have and the have-nots will continue to have not.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a big deal. And
Mhm.
so, but back to the point about the coaches, literally when I had conversations, I can count three specific Division One mid majors, not even Power Fours, mid majors.
Mhm.
And the day that we were sitting in Gulfport, Mississippi, at the Gulf Coast Exposure Camp, and I'm having these conversations with these coaches, and I'm helping one of them do the recruiting talk to all the kids every day for the entire day.
Mhm.
He was heartbroken. And the reason he was heartbroken is for our audience is because he kept 32 to 34 kids on his roster all the time. Different stages of players. Some of them on money, some of them were walk-ons, some of them he considered to be walk-on with development, some of them were academic kids that were there, but he looked at all of them. He gave roster spots to kids that he felt like could play for me now, but also may develop into that kid that could play and help me in a year or two. He had to call 6 kids. He had to make a call to 6 kids, Coach Balduf, and they were already on his roster,
Yeah.
and tell them that he is going to have to tell them that they're going to have to transfer because he's not going to have a spot for them. And then he had 7 more kids, okay, that were already committed
Uh-huh.
verbally that he had to make that call to tell those families that he's going to have to rescind his offer.
Mhm.
He was absolutely, number one, he was humiliated by having to do that because his word was his promise, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's that guy that says, if I tell you something, I mean it.
Yeah.
And so this whole process has unwound the whole recruiting world, and it's done it at every level because now even the D2 coaches that had fundamental solid offers out. Now, what's going to happen, Mandy, when a kid that was already getting a little bit of playing time at the Division One level enters the portal?
Yeah.
What happens to the D2 coach now?
Yeah.
They go get the player
They can go get that player. I
that's
mean,
21 years old that's already got 2 years of playing experience, and because she wasn't in the top 25 of that coach or that coach brought in a freshman that was going to be better than that kid, they cut him loose. Now all of a sudden that dropped the rock in the water, that trickle,
well,
Mandy, that's real.
coach, the other end of this is, I believe, and you can check me if I'm wrong, but if you were going to exhaust eligibility this year as a senior, as a Division 1 player, and you had previously had a year of JUCO, I believe you're getting that year back. So now it's basically like that extra COVID kid you thought you were not going to need. You thought you had this replaced, but they're staying. So you've got the whole roster limits, but you also now have an extra year of
Because
potential. So
and this is as a
exactly.
result of that lawsuit from the Vanderbilt football guy that had 2 years of junior college. But listen, throw this out there, Mandy. The wording in that particular piece of legislation that's coming down for the school this year, number one, they're not giving them 2 years. They're granting 1 year for the
One.
25s. And they're going, and you're right about that. And there could be some additional adjustment to that. But not only does it come from the NCAA standpoint to the JUCO, if you were a non-NCAA
NCAA.
institution,
Yeah. Does that mean NAI?
that means NAI and that means NCCAA, the National Christian College Athletic Association, as well. So the interpretation of it now, when they worded it, they didn't include, well, if you're already at a 4-year school. They said if you come from JUCO and you were at a non-NCAA institution, they never defined
Right.
NAI or the NCCAAs, so they are non-NCAA institutions. And as a result, now that whole, for lack of a better word, that crop to harvest from became even bigger because of it.
Absolutely.
And parents don't realize that. And here's the frustrating part for me,
Well,
and I know it is for you, is we have all these high school coaches and travel and club coaches they're wonderful human beings. They are absolutely they're coaching for the right reasons. They love their children. They're coaching these kids. They want the best for them. But here they are. They're so antiquated in their understanding of what's going on. They're sending them to these showcases and these camps and they all D1 this and D1 that, and they don't realize the kid number one was on the bubble to begin with their skills, and number two, now that you look at all this, you're wasting time, energy, and money going places you don't need to go. Talk to me about a little bit about that, about how you see that piece of that too.
Well, I mean, for me, I'm so old school, coach, because this whole NIL stuff, like and I'll say it right now. I mean, I feel like you already got paid. You were getting your scholarship. You were getting extra stuff and gear and food and opportunity. I'm so old school. So paying kids is just so over, like it just doesn't, it blows my mind that we're at this point in time. But at the same time, it's like, I want, I lost my train of thought on this one. Um, I want to take it back to the point of going to school. What is the point of going to school is to get an education. This you have got to find that fit that is about the academics because I'm not I get really offended when people are like, "Well, we'll just go here and then we'll dabble in the portal." It's not something that you should be using as a stepping stone. It's not a I'm going to settle here and then move. Guys, this is about a 4-year opportunity. Like I really preach to my families and my kids about making that right decision that's a fit, not athletically. It's got to be academics first. So I mean, to me, I'm always going back to what is the ultimate goal of this, and it's to get an education. Let's take away everything else. Take away the portal and the NIL. Guys, you jump in the portal 3 or 4 times. How many of those credits are transferring? Like I would love to see the statistics. That's a very hard word to say for me right now. Statistics of since NIL has come, like what are graduation rates? What are what are grades like? How is that affecting again, you transfer, typically not all credits are transferring. So I
Yeah.
mean, I couldn't imagine being a coach in today's world, roster management. Whew, good gravy.
Listen, and the
I
thing is,
mean,
there's two things you just brought up. One of the roster management piece. I'm gonna come back to that in a second. But there was a time, and you remember this. There was a time as a college coach where your scholarship number of scholarships you had available was based on APR.
yes.
It was based on what your graduation rate was. It was based on, and if you had if you had kids that were leaving and not graduating, the NCAA stepped in and they took away a number or limited your number of roster spots. So now all of a sudden, the true emphasis has shifted from the educational piece, having good grades, getting your degree, to now it's just about playing ball somewhere. But the thing is that impacts 1.7% of the kids coming out of high school, and everybody else is going to play D2, NAIA, Division III, or junior college ball.
Coach, why would a D1 Power Four coach even recruit a high school kid these days? I
Well, I'm
mean,
going to tell you in the conversations we've had, what are you hearing about that?
what benefit? I can go get a portal kid who has experience and is a grown woman who can come and immediately impact versus a kid who may not have weight training, may not have the nutrition, might not have the grades, might not even have the real want to. I mean, recruiting is one piece of this. That's the start, but you got to get there and earn your job. You've seen a lot of my kids. I've had kids at the Division 1 level, mid majors they didn't get playing time their first year, but they stuck it out and they're getting playing time. And it's I can't I just there's not a lot of freshmen who go in and start right away at any level. And I think that's a fallacy too, is that like, oh, I'm gonna go play. Well, you're gonna earn a chance to play, but that's not guaranteed. So I know what I'm hearing from the Power Fours. They're going to the portal. The mid majors are going to the JUCO because portal kids typically will, big time a mid major. So those coaches are going to the JUCO kids, where again, grown woman, grown man, right? So why would you recruit a high school kid in today's day and age?
Because at the end of the day, when I can place that grown man or that grown woman that's 21 or 22 years old, that's already acclimated through the first year of college life, which is an acclimation.
Mm-hmm.
You have got to figure out how to make that adjustment. It's an emotional adjustment, it's a mental adjustment, it's a physical adjustment. And so they have to understand that that's a big deal. And what happens is the D1 guys, all of them will go to the portal and the junior college route first now
Mhm.
because there's just, and here's the other piece of this. You said it. You said if a kid that's a Power Four kid gets in the portal because they're not getting playing time, then all of a sudden they big time some of those smaller mid majors. And folks, I'm going to tell y'all a little statistic, okay? About 40% of the kids that get into the transfer portal, their career ends right there.
Mhm.
It dies in the portal because they won't humble themselves and understand there's a reason you didn't play at that school last year. There's a reason your playing time was limited. It's because the coaches saw better athletes on the field that they already had. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mandy. Go
No,
ahead.
you're fine. I was just you say things and I want to jump in, so I didn't mean to cut you off. But that peels that layer back for those kids. Like they weren't good enough, but they stuck it out and they stayed through it because why? The school is the right fit. The environment is the right fit. They love being a part of the team. It wasn't necessarily about playing if they got that chance. Heck, one of my kids wasn't even traveling. She was on the team, but she wasn't even on the travel roster. Right. So these kids, and I've had conversations with them over the summer and just making sure they're okay. And neither one of those two wanted to transfer. They were like, no, it's okay. I knew, I was sitting behind a senior, an all conference senior. Well, but you learned a lot and now you're getting your opportunity because that coach has to trust you. In this whole transfer portal, I don't know how coaches, used to recruit in cycles every 2 years. Well, heck, now you don't even know what your roster is going to look like really from semester to semester.
So let's talk about roster management, okay? And that's a big thing that most parents, travel ball coaches, travel ball recruiting coordinators, high school, they don't understand that because it's not something that college coaches really talk about because it's a frustrating subject for them. Here's what we're talking about when we talk about roster management for everybody, okay? And I'm going to use our son Jordan as an example for this because he was an offense coordinator in college football. And so he would talk about the fact that he was having to not only recruit future players, but he was having to spend time re-recruiting his current players to make sure that they're okay and stay and be a part of the program. And he said, this is the piece of it that drives me nuts is because I shouldn't have to go back and re-recruit the guy that I already have here. And that guy should be able to understand he's on the roster, he's on the depth chart based on what position he's at and where he ranks. And if he's not good with that, why don't he try to work his butt off to get to the next level of the depth chart instead of me having to re-recruit the guy because I've already spent a year and a half of developing him and getting him ready, and then all of a sudden he decides to leave. Guys, that is a real problem, and the softball coaches see that as a real problem as well, especially at the Division I level. Not Patty Gasso or Pat Murphy or Beth Torina or Coach Kelly at UCLA or Lonnie Alameda at Florida State or Tim Walton at Florida. They're not having to recruit. They really aren't having to re-recruit their roster because the kids that they want are going to stay. The kids that got there on the bubble, they automatically want to get in the portal and leave. So they don't care if they leave. That sounds heartless, but if a kid is a drama filled problem, they're okay with that kid going ahead and rolling out. But those coaches at mid major, they're having to re-recruit the current girls they already have on their roster, and they're
Yeah,
having to
coach.
make them feel.
I've got a softball coach who is, I wouldn't say fearful, but he refrains from putting his rookies, his freshmen up for like conference awards because they're going to get poached. You're going to go from a Horizon League potentially to a MAC school or a Big Ten. And so he's afraid, and those things are happening behind the scenes. I've got coaches worried about coaches reaching out behind the scenes coaching. I mean, that's great. Again, that goes to roster management. So you've got to be able to make sure that you're connected with these kids, but it's a different environment. It's a different kid. It's again, I'm thankful. I'm thankful every day that I am no longer, having to worry about those things. But I hear it. I mean, we hear the frustrations, and then it trickles down into the Division twos as well.
It
Um,
does. And what everybody doesn't really realize is that it creates a little bit of a vacuum in the recruiting process. And so what I mean by that is that kid that, like you said earlier, that may have been that bubble kid that could have played at a Division I school. Now their skill set is good enough to play there, but they're going to end up needing to go play Division II or NAIA Division III.
And that's
And
okay. And that is okay,
that
folks.
is so
For
okay.
everybody that's going to hear this, 7% of kids will go play at any division. It is an honor and a privilege. It's not about the D whatever. Those degrees behind me don't say that I played NAIA softball and it didn't keep me from a D2 head coaching job. This is about in finding what is your fit. I can't stress that enough, from an academic fit, a social fit, a distance fit, a religious fit. I mean, it really goes back to peel everything back, guys. This is about a degree and basically 4 more years of an opportunity to play your sport.
That's it. It's about living the dream for 4 more years.
Yeah. I mean,
So let's take it down another path. Um, and I heard this. I heard this the other day, and it really tickled me. But I took a deep breath, and then I went on to explain to the parent how incorrect that was. After I did laugh just a little bit. And here's what they said. Okay, well we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to go play at the junior college, and we'll just walk on if we need
that's the plan.
to. Folks, the reason I laughed at that, and Mandy and I are going to address this a little bit, you you don't decide if you're going to walk on to a program.
You don't get that choice. You don't get to go, hey, I'm gonna go be a part of you. That's not how that works.
You don't show up. You don't show up at practice one day with your glove, your bat, and your bag, and just walk out on the field and act like the coach is going. That's not the way this works. And the thing is, people don't realize. Let's talk about walk on real quick, okay? Mandy, when you were coaching, and you had a kid that you decided, okay, they're going to be a walk on. Mm-hmm. Did you or did you not already have them along in the identification, recognition, evaluation phases, comparison phase, and you got to a point where you just realized, I like the kid, I like them, I think they could be somebody that develops for me, and then it was after you had already gone through that process of evaluation and determination on who's you're going, and you made the decision, okay, I'm going to offer her a roster spot as a walk-on because I've already taken her through the process and I just don't have the money, or she's not quite good enough developed skill set to get the money yet. So talk to me about that, because parents don't understand that either.
Well, you just hit on it. Like, you just hit on it. Going back to my D2 days, coach, I was never fully funded. Of the 7.2 at Division II, I never saw more than 4 scholarships. Okay. So that's not a whole lot, folks. That in the conference I was trying to compete in, that's nothing. Okay. So a lot of times, yes, it came down to I didn't have money, but I really, really liked you. But that wasn't a kid who just showed up at my office and knocked on my door and just said, hey, I want to be a part of the team. This kid had already been recruited. I'd seen them play, had them at camps, had them on visits, and they just understood, like, this was a situation. I really need you, but I don't have the money this year. Right. I mean, so yeah, I mean, these walk-ons are not just gonna stop in, grab a jersey and it's on like that. There's no, those spots are preferred positions that I was saved for kids I knew about. There was never one of my walk-ons was just a kid that just literally walked into the office.
And that's what parents and kids don't understand is you can't just say, well, I'm just going to walk on. No, you're not. A walk on is an offer of a roster spot because you already went through the entire recruiting process with that coach, and they deemed that, number one, they like you, they're going to offer you a roster spot, but maybe they just don't see your skills as developed yet enough to give you the money, or they just don't have the money to be able to give it to you.
Or a coach is just a runner or a high academic, kind of spot kid for me. I love recruiting just runners as my walk-ons. I mean, speed is, kind of important in our game. So, and if they had high grades, then I didn't need to give them a whole lot of money because they were getting the academic.
Wait. Time out. You mean to tell me that grades and ACT, SAT scores actually matter?
They still matter. Yes.
Oh, what
I
a
know.
novel idea, Coach Balduf. Let's go down that pathway real quick,
Let's
okay?
do it. Yeah.
Let's go down that pathway. So let's go back to your days, okay?
Okay, because it's changed since that rule has definitely changed since my day because they were exempted. If you had high academics,
Okay.
you had an ACT score of a certain and you were 10% in the top of your class, you were exempt from me having to claim any of your academic money. I only claimed athletically. Now that are and if you fell below that and I wanted to offer you, I would have to take on your academic money against my equivalency. So why would I go after a kid who doesn't meet the exemption? So that's high academics, that's ACT, SAT, and that was coach. I was identifying those kids in their freshman, sophomore year with those grades. When a freshman or sophomore came at me with a 25 ACT, I knew I wanted to keep this kid on my radar because that was one of my checkoffs. That's one of my identification pieces.
I need everybody to rehear what I'm gonna restate what you just said so they can rehear it. Guys, Coach Bowden just told you that she was looking at kids that were freshmen and sophomores that already sat for an SAT or an SAT, and that was a determining factor on whether or not she would move them forward in the process and keep them on the radar of watching. Now, nothing has changed with that.
Mm-mm.
Okay, the NCAA may have gone out of their mind and decided that we don't need ACT or SAT scores as part of the
Of the eligibility.
eligibility process. Okay, you couldn't get statistic out of your mouth. Now I couldn't get eligibility out of my mouth. So, but they lost their mind, and so they decided, well, we're just going to go test optional because of the COVID stuff. Don't get me started on that garbage. But anyway, the bottom line is they went brain dead, and they decided to not to cause an ACT or SAT to be part of eligibility. Fair enough. Then all of a sudden, you had some schools that started in California, and then it went back to the east, where they said, "Well, we're just going to be test optional. Period. You don't even have to have an ACT or SAT to get admitted into our school. We're just going to go on GPA." Now that's changing back. Here's the point: no matter what the NCAA does about or doesn't do about requirement for an NCAA for an ACT or SAT for eligibility, most all colleges now have gone back to and transitioned back to not necessarily a test score for admission, but a test score to give academic based SAT, ACT merit based scholarship money.
Mm-hmm. Yep. A lot of those outside
Well,
scholarships, that's going to be a variable. And I would just,
well,
I mean, the best takeaway I can give you is I'd rather you guys have a test score and not need it than need it and not have it.
and have it
It
early.
because
Have
even
one.
coach, even if the school's test optional, you're telling me it's not going to be test preferred. I mean that so even if it's optional, there's going to be again a scholarship money that has that variable outside scholarship, and then you and I both know we still have coaches that reach out to us saying, "Hey, what do you have in this class? But I need a minimum of a 27 ACT." Oh, so again, and you and I chuckle because we know. Oh, so that score's still important to you, isn't it?
It's still important. And so, to your point earlier, I want to just let the audience know, guys, if you're a freshman in high school, you don't need to sit around and wait to talk to your guidance counselor at your school about when you're going to take the ACT or SAT, because they're going to tell you we're going to give it to you your junior year,
For
and by
free.
the junior year in the softball world, by the junior year in the softball world, there's a
Yep.
lot of water that's already gone under the bridge and a lot of hay that's in the barn. And I'll just use this as an example. There are mid-major coaches at the Division I level that by the time you get to your junior year, they already have their list of 25 girls that at one position,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to recruit. They've got their list of 25, and they're spending all their time evaluating, reevaluating, and comparing those 25 girls to who's going to get the offer come September 1st.
That's right.
And understand that's just the way it works, right? And so that period means that between your freshman and sophomore year, you need to have things in order. You need to already understand what it's like to have an NCAA eligibility number. You need to know that. You need to have a test score under your belt so you have an understanding of how you can get better on that test, because the difference in a 21 ACT score and a 27 may mean as much as $40,000 or $50,000 to you and your family.
That's right.
And
That's right.
coaches know that.
It's a factor that I'm looking for. I mean, I want smart kids. I don't want to have to handhold you, but that scholarship opens up money that I don't have to give athletically that academics is going to pick up. And so I could spread my wealth out a little bit more. I can get more bang for my buck when I don't have to worry about, these high academic kids. And there's some schools, I mean, you want at least a 30 ACT. Well, I kind of want to know early on, am I scoring a 25, 27 that can actually project out? Otherwise, I'm going to waste my time if I get to my junior year and I pop a 21. Well, forget about that school. And that was the only egg in the basket. So, I mean,
And
we can't have these kids and families there's no disadvantage, guys. There is not a single disadvantage to taking it early. You can't give me a con to this. I can give you about 15 pros. You can't give me a con to taking it early. There's no
no,
disadvantage.
early and often.
Often. And if you have
That
the which one is the next question, that really kind of depends on a major, typically a science major, you want the ACT.
yeah. And that goes to other educational pieces, right? That we're able to communicate with our families that we choose to offer and work with is, and I'm just going to throw this out. You're right. All right. If you have more of a math and science brain, and that's more your strength, ACT is probably a better test for you to take. If you have more of an English comprehension writing brain, then the SAT is probably a little bit better for you to take. And again, that's just kind of one of those things that over time you begin to realize that that's part of how you advise kids is based on what their strengths are in the classroom and possibly what they want to major in. Let's take another step. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about um, right now. I know we've been hot on the right conditioning, the right nutrition.
Yeah.
As a college coach, did you want your athletes that were coming out of high school to already be in the mindset of fueling their body the right way, building their body the right way, so that you didn't have to have a step back once you got them? Talk to me about how important that was as a college coach for the kids to kind of already be in that mindset of the right strength and conditioning, the right nutrition, those kind of things.
Yeah, and I think for me that goes back to you got to remember at Division 2, coach, I was the advisor, the tutor, the trainer, the grounds crew, the laundromat, whatever you want to name it. So, I come from a business background, guys. I have a master's in business. So I'm not a sports trainer, right? So we picked up things that, I use what I learned when I was playing from other coaches, and I learned things along the way, but I was not a trainer or a sport specific kind of coach in training wise. So when a kid could come in, when I could recruit, and it was off, I mean, I like to recruit kids that were in a weight training already, that had some comfortability around weights and I definitely, obviously, kids who could understand nutrition. Because again, I'm not a nutrition. I don't have a dietitian. I don't have food tables. We don't eat like you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yes, I needed a kid who could understand that fuel in is fuel out and really have a grasp on, what it's having the right kind of fit and the right kind of work ethic in the weight room.
So I'm gonna date this back a little time, okay? Because I'm gonna go back to when I played at Ole Miss in the '80s. Y'all, even as back in the '80s, your big conferences, right? By the time it would be the Power Five back then, and really it wasn't even the Power Five because you still had a transition from the Southwest Conference moving into Big Ten, Big 12. So anyway, long story short, I predate all that. But here's one thing I can tell y'all, okay? As an athlete, and this is before they said there was no longer to be athletic dorms and athletic meal meal tables, right? Cafeterias. We had every sport had their own specific nutritional plan that you had to follow. It was laid out for you when you went through the cafeteria. They knew based on who you were, the people there, the nutritionists and the others, and the people serving the food knew who you were, and you got what you were supposed to get that day for
Yep.
your proteins, for your carbs, for your combo, all the stuff, your
You
sugars,
didn't have to
everything. They
think
had it
about it.
all laid out.
You didn't have to think about
No, you didn't. The only thing you could think about is whether you wanted that salad bar or whether you didn't
it.
want a salad bar. Okay. And they'd give you some latitude on that. But the rest of the stuff was laid out. You didn't have a choice on what your conditioning plan was for the day because that day was laid out for you as a conditioning plan. So the thing that we're hearing more and more now, guys, is the biggest transition that high school players have is moving from that to college when they truly haven't been nutritioning and fueling their body the right ways, and they haven't truly been doing the strength and conditioning program that needs to be done to really help them transition into college. Not to mention maximize what they are here. So I think the takeaway.
I think it's another factor that goes with we're looking for the kid that has the right academics and test scores and obviously can play, but now are they D1 nutrition? Are they, D2 weightlifting? Like there's other factors, guys, beyond just being good that are going to play into this that really piece it all together. And I think nutrition in the weight room is definitely a huge factor for these coaches when they're
It
looking
really
at.
is. I know one of the things we've done with our athletes is we made sure that they have access to the Eat to Win app so that they can begin to learn how to fuel their bodies. It's not a diet app. That's what I told somebody, that it's not a diet app. It's a way for you to learn as an athlete how to fuel your body for optimal performance.
Mhm.
Just like you should be training, weightlifting, speed and agility, all that stuff, conditioning, you should be doing that stuff to prepare your body for the optimal performance.
Because if you're not, coach, you got portal kids who have already had 2 years of college weightlifting and eating right.
And they have been, even at the junior college,
Yeah.
they've got a plan that they give them. Now the kid has to they have to self administer the plan a lot of times at the junior college, but they hand them a sheet that talks about their nutrition. They hand them a sheet on what their workout plan's got to be if it's an off season deal, and they got to go do it. So as high school kids, y'all might as well learn how to do it now, because if
That's
you
right.
don't, you're behind.
That's right.
And that's where let's talk a couple minutes here about and let's really focus on what you think a high school kid really needs to do in the softball world to put themselves in the best position to be recruited to go on to play in college.
Okay. I think I'll give like two different analogies. The one that I always use is fishing in the right pond. I mean, guys, if you're targeting the wrong schools and you're sending 50 emails out and you're going to 70 camps that aren't in your pond, you're wasting time. You got to know which ponds are going to be biting for you. And then yesterday, being outside, coach, working in the yard and getting ready for gardening season really made me think about, crazy enough, recruiting and how when you plant a seed, coach, when I go out and plant these seeds, I got to take care of that seed. I got to water it. I got to make sure it's got the sun. I got to feed it. I got to keep pests away from it. I got to nurture it. That's recruiting, folks. You plant a seed, and a lot of these kids and these families expect fruit to bear tomorrow. It takes time, y'all. You've got to take time with that seed, that relationship that you're building with coaches. Yes, you're sending emails, but that's a seed. You got to keep continuing to follow up with good video, and you got to get active a little bit on social media. So there's a lot of different things that help that seed and that relationship grow. But if we're not focused in the right pond to begin with, we're not catching any fish, and we're certainly not growing any plants and vegetables and fruit. So I mean, to me, it goes back to just you've got to do the work. It's proactive, folks. That seed is not just gonna nurture on its own. There's things that have to happen that you have to do. We can't just sit back and wait and hope that plant grows. So I mean, for me, it's I think the biggest takeaway is you got to get after it, guys. You've got to engage these coaches in different ways and build that relationship.
Mandy, not only does fishing in the right places, sending the right information out to the right places is a big deal, but it's also a matter of who you know. When we all know that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mhm.
And when you are able to help a young person actually make a connection with somebody where they fit, it matters. And that piece of it, and if parents could just stop and take a deep breath and stop spending thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that they're wasting. And they're going places because they got an email from Pat Murphy at Alabama because he's got a camp. And y'all, Pat Murphy's a longtime friend of NSR. We all know that. We've had, I don't know how many kids go up there and play that we worked with over the years. That doesn't mean that because you got an email to come to Pat's camp that he's interested in recruiting you. You're just on a mailing list. If he was interested in recruiting you, you would know that. It would Mandy would know it because we would have had a conversation, and you wouldn't be coming to a general camp day. You would be coming to a specific camp that was probably 4 hours that was going to be given, and 35 or 40 girls were going to be there, not 400.
Yep.
And I think that's the piece that parents don't understand is you got to step back and look at the reality of this, and especially stop posting stuff on social media about my kid got this invite. We're so excited. Your kid got an invite to junior day softball. So did
Oh,
4,000 other girls. And I know you're proud of them as a parent, but that's insignificant in the recruiting process.
but you're gonna waste time, money, and energy chasing those things, and nothing gets you further along. That's not an identification stage. That's not an evaluation. That's not a comparison, and it certainly isn't going to lead to an offer.
It's
I
not.
mean, camps are part of the puzzle, but it's when you're going to the right camps, and you'll know that beyond just some random, email.
You will. And I realize that so many club and travel coaches and recruiting coordinators they're doing their best from their knowledge to try to help kids get noticed and help kids get recruited. And sometimes they're part of the problem in this, in
Yeah.
the sense that they're sending every kid in their organization. Every firecracker is going to go to this camp. Or here's what's even better: the organization will put on a quote unquote college day and have one coach, one Division I coach, come in and do a little clinic for their 500 players in their organization.
Yeah.
And parents buy into that as if that's meaningful.
Right. And they'll keep going. And coaches aren't recruited. I never recruited a team. That's just not the case. My thing that bugs me beyond that, coach, is play days on campuses. Like I'm bringing that team on for the one kid that I'm looking at. So the other 13 are just wasting their time having a play day.
That's it.
And they'll do that.
And
They'll eat
let
that.
me,
They'll eat that stuff up, and they'll tout it on social media about where we have all these college play days. Well, that's good for 2 kids.
and
The
that's
rest of
all
y'all
because
have
that's
no
only two
business.
kids.
Yeah,
That's
the
the
rest of
only
y'all have
two
no
kids they're
business.
looking at.
That's right.
And I'm gonna tell you right now, our junior colleges now are even bad about that, especially in Mississippi, having all these play days where these teams are coming in. These travel ball coaches are eating it up and they're taking their kids. And look, I'm all for it. Okay, I'm all for them going competing. But the truth is, that girl that's a junior that's throwing 64 miles an hour in the circle is the reason y'all are going to that, not the shortstop that's really a good athlete that runs a 2.9 home to first, but everybody says she runs a 2.7. And so at the end of the day, we laugh about that, guys, because y'all come up with some. Look, if y'all tell me a high school kid's got a 1.65 pop time as a catcher,
Yeah, I need to see this.
I need to see it. And
I
here's
need to
why I
see
need to
it.
see it, because that's gonna be some. Listen, and when you tell me she throws a 1.55 pop time, I'm going to tell you that it's not her, it's the person holding the stopwatch. You don't know what you're doing, because that's rare. 1.6 is rare. 1.7 is rare.
Yeah, mine lately have been shuttle runs. If these people are doing shuttle runs in feet, then those times are on. But if we're doing yards, then these times are off, man. Shuttle time.
Listen, if a girl runs a 5.10.5, and that's 5 yards, 10 yards, 5 yards. Okay, start in the middle, 5 one way, 10 back to the other, 5 in the middle to cross. If that kid runs anything sub 4.8, she's blistering fast.
Yep. And we've seen them. I mean, we've had them. I
We've
know
had them.
some kids that are in the 4.7s for sure.
That's it.
It's
But you
not every
tell me
day.
that you have a kid that runs that in a 4.1 or 4.2 or 4 flat, which that was the big thing we saw earlier.
Yeah.
People posting on social media that my kid ran a 4-second 5.10.5. No, she didn't.
No, you didn't.
You
I mean, those
didn't.
are that's beyond any professional. That we're talking elites of the elites of the
Let
supernatural.
Well, here's the thing: we can go to the 5.10.5 and the cone drills in the NFL Combine with these men that are 21, 22, 23 years old that are in the best condition in physical shape and fastest kids in the world, and they're not running that speed. So why in the world do you think your 15-year-old daughter is running that speed that just ate some Cheetos on the couch before she came out to get to the field to play? I mean, so that's the piece of it that making these people don't understand. I know we're not making fun of that. We're not.
No,
We're
we're
really
not.
not. But we're trying to shock and awe you a little bit to realize as an audience that this stuff you guys are hurting yourself when you tell somebody that my kid throws 65 and we put her under the radar 5 straight pitches after she's already been warmed up and she doesn't ever touch 61. She
Right.
doesn't touch she doesn't throw 65. Somebody's
Yeah, it's not
radar is off.
it's not our equipment.
It's not the equipment. And that's the big argument we always get. Well, she was just tested the other day. No, she wasn't. I mean, somebody told you that because they're selling you a bat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, or they're selling you whatever system they want you to buy. But when the radar guns all pop out, then they're all about the same. So don't overestimate what your standards are and what your metrics are to these coaches. Mandy, we could go on for another 5 hours and never
I
touch
know.
everything that we need to touch. So any last words you want to give to our audience today? And I know we've talked about recruiting so much. We've talked about the transfer portal. We've talked about roster limitations. We've talked about walk-ons. We talked about ACT. We talked about everything. But there's so much depth to it. We could have taken any one of those subjects and spent literally 3 or 4 hours on it because it's that deep. So
Yeah.
anything you want to finalize with today as we leave our audience?
I'll give you the 4 P's that I have for recruiting. I mean, number one, you've got to be proactive. Things are not just going to reactively happen to you. So let's be proactive. Let's make things happen. Secondly, let's be positive, right? Positive mindset, positive at the fields. Let's be good teammates. Let's be good people, right? Then I want you guys to be so we got proactive, we've got positive. I want you to be persistent. You need to be persistent in the way that you email and the way that you're sending videos and the way that you're using your social media. It can't be once in a blue moon, right? We can't just plant that seed and just expect fruit to bear. There's things that we have to do. So you've got to be proactive. You've got to stay positive. The last one is you better be ready to pivot. And I think that's what today was a lot about. I mean, folks think that they know, but you better be ready to pivot. You better be open-minded to learning some things and that will help you stay out of your own way. My goodness. Pivoting right now is one of my big ones with a lot of my families is just having that conversation that I know your goals, kiddo, but we can get there. It might just look a little different these days. And we got to be ready and willing to pivot to new opportunities that come.
Right. Which leads me to what I want to end with, and then we'll call it a day. Folks, if you're watching this, number one, you got to get your kid properly evaluated.
Yes.
Okay. And that means somebody that actually deals with college coaches and understands what it is that every level is trying to accomplish actually gives you a really good assessment of what your skill sets are. And parents, that's Coach Mandi, that's myself, that's any one of our NSR scouting staff members, because it's just the space we live in.
Yeah.
Unlike other people, we don't do this as weekend warriors. We're not doing it because we got a kid that plays on our team, and we're not doing it because I'm getting paid a little bit of extra money by the travel team to coach a team. This is what we do every day, 60 hours a week, 365 days a year, and I won't say 24 hours a day, but it sometimes feels that way. And this is the space that we live in. And so the point I'm making is that if your child had a broken arm and it was broken right through the middle right there, you would not take your child to an ear, nose, and throat doctor. You would take them to an orthopedic surgeon to fix it. You wouldn't take them to the Walmart to buy some tape and some I don't know, some Bengay or whatever to rub on it and tape it up. You wouldn't do that either.
Would you
You
YouTube it?
do what?
Would you YouTube it? Would you
No,
YouTube?
yeah, that's the latest thing. We're just going to YouTube it, and because we can get one of these online sports whatever recruit sites or these NC whatever SA stuff or whatever it is, or we can get one of those, and that's going to help us because everybody on the team's got one of those. If you're doing what everybody else is doing, if you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're missing. You got to be different.
You got to be uncommon.
So start the process by getting identified and evaluated. Yeah, but you got to be absolutely evaluated first so you understand what your skills are. So number one, let's get you evaluated. Here's the second thing I'm going to say, and this is for parents. There is a definition of insanity. And here's that definition. You keep doing the same thing over and over and over again because you expect a different result from what you got the first time. That's insane. That's wasted a lot of time, energy, and money in the process as well. So if you're going to continue just doing the same thing over and over again, then you need to expect that nothing's going to change at the end. And I don't think anybody's truly insane, right? In this space we're in today. So get them evaluated so we can tell you what you got, and that starts with contacting one of us. Coach Mandi Balduf, what a pleasure it's been for us to spend an hour of time with you. The accolades and your background speak for itself. The success you've had at NSR with helping kids live their dreams and accomplish their dreams it speaks for itself. Folks, if you need something, please reach out to us and let us know. And we certainly appreciate you taking your valuable time to watch and listen in as we talk about recruiting as it applies to the softball world. Everybody have a great day.